This podcast is part of the Big Heads Media Podcast Network. Go to bigheadsmedia.com for more great podcasts.
This is Mike.
And Beck.
And Nina.
And we are Brew Crime. Alright, on this episode, we are doing camping crimes, I guess? Mm-hmm. Or out in nature crimes, I don't know, whatever it means to you, as Booze and Brews would say. Alright, so I think we're going to start with Nina today. So give us a hint of what your story is going to be about, and then we will get into the beer we're pairing with it.
Sure. So I'm going to be talking about Robert Christian Hansen. Long story short, he picked up women, drove them, I guess you don't drive them, he flew them with his plane to the Alaskan wilderness, dropped them naked and alone, and essentially hunted them down like animals. To match this, I picked a beer. That's a lie. I didn't really pick the beer. Someone in the liquor store picked the beer for me, and it's called the Lancaster Bomber. I picked it because it has an airplane on it.
That makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. Why don't you shout out this person that helped you out pick out the beer then?
Yeah, so I've been recently going to Legacy Liquor Store, which is in Olympic Village here in Vancouver. And it's the same guy that's been always helping me, and finally we kind of just got chatting. His name is Christopher, so huge shout out to Christopher.
Woo.
The Lancaster Bomber is actually one of his personal collection that he brought into the store. He actually went to the back of the store to pull out 3 of these cans for me.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Christopher, You're my hero, and I'm so happy you're there because I'm so useless.
You're the bomber. No.
Hey. Yes, yeah. And I mean, Chris's title is beer manager. And like, really?
Yeah.
But it's pretty badass.
Yeah, it definitely is pretty badass, yeah.
Life goals.
Life goals. One day we'll be almost as cool as you. Okay. So I'm just going to read the little description on the beer, and then Mike's going to do his thing. So the Lancaster Bomber is a classic English ale, chestnut in color with a lovely full-bodied flavor, enriched with a wonderful late hop character. A multi-award-winning ale that pays tribute to the Avro Lancaster and is quite simply the, and I quote, best of British beer.
All right, so the beer has kind of a deep amber color, sort of a off-white head. I don't know what you'd say. What do you think?
Mm-hmm. It's a little off-white. It's nice, though.
So the aroma is just kind of a mild malty note. There's some citrusy and citrus pith in there. It's not a super big aroma, really.
What's pith? That was a big word for me.
You know when you like peel an orange, and you got kind of that. There's the rind, but underneath there's the white part and everything. That's kind of the pith, yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's got kind of a lemony, citrusy note going on.
I really like this beer.
And then there's obviously like the grainy, malty. It's not really caramel or anything. It's just kind of grainy malt backbone.
Yeah, it's a little bit sweet, but it's not really sweet enough to be
it's
caramel.
It's a really understated beer, but it's really delicious at the same time. Like you're not going to be blown away with this beer at all. But at the same
just
time,
good.
You're going to enjoy every sip.
Yeah.
This is not boring like some yellow fizzy lager that has, I know Nina, sorry, but it has no flavor or anything. Like there's a lot of flavor here still, but it's just not going to blow you away. It's really nice. I like this.
Yeah, no. So, Chris, awesome job on that choice.
Good job,
delicious.
sir.
Robert Christian Hansen was born in Pocahontas, Idaho in 1940.
Pocahontas, really?
I actually had to look this shit up because I was like, are you serious? Like, Idaho's already known for its potatoes, and now they got Pocahontas land
there.
there.
Now they got the racism too, huh?
Oh.
Wow.
Well.
Sacagawea? Like what?
Bless you.
Okay, back to Pocahontas, yeah.
Thank you. In his youth, not to be confused with the real Pocahontas, Robert was very average. Basically, everything I found was just really average. A lot of people described him as skinny and shy. He did have a severe case of acne that left him permanently scarred.
That sucks.
Yeah. Ignored by the girls in his school, he grew up hating them and eventually actually started having fantasies of getting his revenge on them later. As targets, he selected prostitutes or exotic dancers, abducting them. He would bring them to his plane and then fly them out to the wilderness. To quote him, "If they came across with what I wanted, we'd come back into town. I'd tell them if they made any trouble for me. I had connections and would have them put in jail for being prostitutes." And this worked for a lot of the women. So there was actually some of them which he took, assaulted, and then dropped them back off and essentially just told them, if you tell anyone, I'm going to rat you out. And it actually worked. Yeah.
It's sad that there's that much like hate against sex work that they'll actually keep quiet because of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. When some of the women would make demands for payment after sex, depending how he felt, some of them were murdered. Sometimes Hansen would strip them naked and stalk them like animals, making the kill with a hunting knife or his favorite rifle. So, obviously, when you're picking up a prostitute, my understanding would be that there's an exchange. So you do this for me, I give you money.
Yeah.
A business contract.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes, a business contract. Well, some of the women which he didn't feel like paying, depending how they reacted to not getting the payment, was how he selected who he would murder or not. Because during his reign of terror, he did actually attack many other women who he didn't murder. I'm sure all those women who did get away felt very blessed and very lucky when they found out, when everything came to light of what he had actually done.
Yeah, I know for sure. I mean, they're probably still devastated, but yeah, you lived.
Yeah. Hansen also had a nickname of the Butcher Baker. He owned a bakery in town and a mini mall between 1970 and the 1980s. He also lived across town with his wife and children, who knew nothing of his other life. So they were all living in Anchorage, just outside. No idea. I don't even understand how you would have no idea, but double life.
Some people can compartmentalize really well.
Yep. He had easy access to women, given the construction of the 800-mile oil pipeline. Many who looked for quick riches left quickly as they arrived in Anchorage, making sudden disappearances not that unusual. So a lot of women, did go up there to work and, make money from these men who are working on the pipeline. And, of course, for those that, the lifestyle didn't work for them or whatever, having them disappear suddenly wasn't really that worrisome for some people because they just assumed you're just coming in and out.
Often sex work is pretty transient, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially in these work camps. Because the work camps will move around, but there's always a lot of money to be spent and a lot of lonely guys, and unfortunately, a lot of shit can happen at those camps.
Right, and the way that Hansen had found his victims, essentially any woman who for $300 would go anywhere with him. From his looks, women apparently felt they had no reason to fear him. As one rape victim had reported, and to quote her, he sort of looked like the perfect dork. So it was said that all of this changed once they were alone with him in the truck. After he would pick them up, he would take them with his truck, then bring them to his plane and fly them out.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what would possess you to get on a plane with someone if you're just doing an exchange, but...
Especially if you're already getting kind of creepy feelings from them at that point.
But I think maybe the way he's getting them on the plane, and I would assume this, I didn't actually find this, but that he's already putting handcuffs on them while they're in the car and dragging them onto the plane. Because at what point would you willingly just follow this stranger that just picked you up on wherever?
Unless he lures you in with I'm a pilot, I can take you on a tour, blah, blah, blah.
That doesn't sound like a business contract.
No, it doesn't.
But, I mean, I don't think these girls were giving a girlfriend experience. I
agree there. Yeah, it was a contract for sex, and that was it, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This all changed once they were alone with him in his truck. Most of the rapes were never reported, and even when Hansen was positively identified, he always went over the prostitute's version of the story, which is awful.
Yeah.
Given his hunting ground, there were never any witnesses to the murders. In 1980, he, of course, after he was arrested and started confessing to his crimes, he said that in 1980, he actually shot the dog of a woman he had murdered just so that the dog wouldn't be able to lead people back to her shallow grave.
Wow.
Yep. It was also noted that Hansen was a trophy collector. He, of course, had one den where he had mounts from his legitimate hunts, while in his basement he had storage space for the trophies from his human victims. It was largely that this trophy collection resulted in his successful conviction. Among the significant items, he had kept a fish necklace that had been custom made for victim Andrea Altieri. So that would kind of seal the deal for that.
Yeah, no shit.
Yep. On June 13th, in 1983, a 17-year-old captive escaped from Hansen. Handcuffs still dangling from one wrist, she ran for help. Her charges brought Hansen to the attention of the task force detectives, and he ultimately ended up confessing to 17 murders.
Wow.
Yep. Police took him on a plane ride of the wilderness where Hansen began pointing out graves to state troopers, and they ended up successfully recovering 11 bodies over the next 8 months. So not all bodies were found. Several victims remained anonymous, their names unknown even to Hansen, but others were identified as Rox Eastland, Lisa Fertrell, Andrea Altry, Angela Fetter, Tersa Watson, and Dalen Frey. Hansen also confessed to raping an additional 30 women during this time.
Wow.
From the 30 women that he had confessed from raping, I wasn't able to find how many of those they were actually able to get convictions out, because obviously some of them weren't. He didn't know their names or anything.
Yeah.
But I would safely assume, maybe I shouldn't assume, but from all the trophies that he had kept, I would assume maybe he kept some of those trophies as well. And hopefully, if he did, they were able to locate them and, actually tie a name to the crime. I don't know. Hansen, of course, was convicted, and he was given a 461-year sentence.
Wow.
Yeah. He served 31 years before succumbing to natural causes in prison, which I don't think is fair at all. He just got to naturally, peacefully die.
Yeah.
But I guess, it is what it is. Last thing I wanted to mention, there's also a movie that came out in 2013 called Frozen Ground. Nicolas Cage is an investigator investigating the crimes, and John Cusack actually plays Hansen. So,
Really?
yeah.
What is this called?
Frozen Ground. Came out in 2013.
I love John Cusack.
Yeah, I think Vanessa Hudgens is also in it. She was in that High School Musical stuff.
No, you lost me.
You lost me?
Yep.
It's okay. But yeah, so there's a couple of that, and yeah, that's what I have for Hansen. Terrifying.
Yeah, it is very terrifying.
Do you have a picture of him? Just so I can see. I looked it up, but all I could find was Christopher Robbins.
Not the same.
No.
Wasn't he like with Peter Pan or something?
It's that's the boy's name in Winnie the Pooh.
Oh, there we go.
And also there's a convicted murderer named Christopher Robbins.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Winnie the Pooh. I'm like, this is murder.
No.
This guy was scarily similar to Israel Keys as well. I was getting a little confused actually with him and Israel Keys at first. I'm like, wait a minute.
Pretty scrawny, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
With his famous plane. And posing with some of the trophy. So this is obviously one of the legal trophies.
Yeah, one of his definitely, like, I think that's sheep horns you're showing us.
Sure. I don't know. It's just horns.
They look like they curl around,
Yeah.
which is usually sheep horns.
Or a ram.
Ram.
Well, yeah. Yeah, ram, sheep. Male sheep, usually.
Yeah.
He looks more serial killer-y in that photo.
Yeah.
I think it's the Band-Aid on his chin.
I think it's the dead eyes.
Definitely. Well, we'll share some of those photos on the website for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, that's what I got.
Alrighty. We'll get our next beer ready and we'll be right back. Alright. Camping is the best part of summer for most Canadians, and I'm one of those people myself. I spend a few days to a week living out of a backpack in the wilderness of this province almost every year. Unfortunately for one British Columbian family, this would not be the case in 1982. Thanks to Ian Dick from Cannery Brewing for the suggestion, and for the beer, I have picked one of Cannery Brewing's beers. This is the Naramata Nut Brown Ale.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a cop-out because instead of actually pairing it with the story itself, I paired it with the brewery that suggested the case.
I think that still works.
I
I
think
like
so,
it.
too.
Yeah.
So Canterbury Brewing's from the Okanagan, from Penticton. It says, Narameta Nut Brown is a traditional English-style brown ale. British and Canadian malted barley give this full-bodied beer a velvety smooth mouthfeel. Traditional English hops balance the malt sweetness and provide a rich, complex flavor. It's 25 BBU and 5.5% alcohol. So it's kind of a very, very deep amber to light brown color. You can see through it. It's got a nice light brown head. Nice, like, chestnutty, roasty, like a mild roasty note. Some caramel on the nose. It's kind of sweet.
It smells like prunes or something to me.
Okay, yeah. It's quite nutty with quite a caramel note on it. It's got some fruity notes to it for sure. Almost no bitterness. A tiny bit of roast. A little bit of sweetness. It's really nice. It's a fairly traditional, easy drinking brown ale. Again, it's not going to blow you away. It's not going to stand out from the crowd, but it's a really easy drinking, like nicely made brown ale. In my opinion, at least. What do you think, Nina?
Pretty nice, actually.
There you go.
Not sure that I really like the smell, because I don't know if I'm like, my schnoz is yet at like fancy craft beer stages, but the palate's nice.
Mm-hmm. I definitely like the flavor more than the bouquet.
Okay. On August 2nd, 1982, 3 generations of a family had decided to head out to Wells Gray Provincial Park in the interior region of the province of British Columbia for a camping trip. It was going to be a wonderful 2-week camping trip. So Wells Gray Provincial Park is around 120 kilometers or 75 miles from Kamloops, or 540 kilometers to 336 miles from Vancouver.
It's far.
Yeah. It is known as the land of 41 named waterfalls and counting. And it is a large park at 5,250 square kilometers or 1.3 million acres. And encompasses alpine wilderness, lakes, mountains, and forest. Seemingly a perfect place for a getaway with family.
Or murder.
Wah wah.
Spoiler, guys.
Exactly. Bob and Jackie Johnson and their 2 daughters, Janet, 13, and Karen, 11, lived in Kelowna, a city in the Okanagan region of the interior BC. They planned to meet Jackie's parents, George and Edith Bentley, who lived in Metro Vancouver city of Port Coquitlam. George and Edith were both big-time campers and had even recently purchased a new 1981 Ford Camper Special. They also would fasten a 10-foot aluminum boat to the top of their camper.
That's a big camper.
Yeah, it is, yeah. Especially for that time in 81 or 82. The last time family heard from the group was when Edith called their second daughter on August 6th. Alarm bells finally went off when Bob did not show up to work after his vacation. This was very odd behavior as he had never missed a day of work in 20 years with the company.
Wow.
So after a week of not showing up to work, they called the police and reported him missing.
A whole week?
What?
Yeah, a week, yeah. I guess you don't freak out too much at first as a coworker.
20 years and perfect attendance, and then by day 2 I would have been like,
the fuck?
Well, you probably were already calling family, like, trying to get a hold of people, but after a week, it's like, okay, something's seriously wrong here.
You clearly didn't have any real work friends.
Yeah.
I would have
Work
been like
family.
on your, I guess Facebook and Instagram wasn't a thing. I'm like, when was the last time you were active on
This
WhatsApp?
is the 80s, yeah. This is the 80s. When was the last time you could dial their home phone or were pagers a thing yet?
Like, what's a home phone?
I don't think
In the
pagers were a
80s?
thing yet in the 80s.
Maybe for rich people.
That's the thing, like, we weren't as connected back then, so you weren't as surprised when people didn't show up. Like, you thought something was up here, but we're so used to, like, instant gratification now.
But how come the schools didn't say anything when the kids didn't come back to school either, if they're 13 and something?
Well, this is summer, though. It's probably outside of school, right?
Right, camping, sorry.
And I don't know if the wife worked. It doesn't sound like it, so it was probably just him. He was the one who had something he had to be at.
Still odd.
Yeah, I agree. So as the family had planned on camping in Wells Gray Provincial Park, the search for the family would be centered there. Frustratingly for everyone, there was no sign of the families in the park. Move forward to September 13th. A mushroom picker would happen upon the burned husk of a car that was similar to the 1979 Plymouth that had been reportedly driven by Bob Johnson. The vehicle was located deep within the park on one of the park roads. The RCMP would send in an investigative team led by Sergeant Michael Eastham to search for the vehicle. They would do a thorough investigation of the burned-out car that had burned so hot that glass and metal had melted.
Wow.
Unfortunately, the wreckage of the car, they would find the 4 incinerated bodies of the adults. They could tell the adults had been shot with a .22 caliber weapon, though. Eastham would now move to the closed trunk. The horror was instantaneous as the remains of the 2 young girls were found, but there was very little left of them. The police could make out some pieces of 2 girls' skulls, but that was all. They noted that the car had been burned using accelerants, as that was the only way the car would have burned that hot, and it actually cremated the bodies.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's hot. Like, literally. I mean.
Yes, that's temperature hot. Yes.
Okay, Paris Hilton.
Now the hunt was on for the camper that George and Edith had been driving to the camping trip. They put together a team of tracking dogs, all of the manpower that the RCMP could spare, and helicopters to try to find it. Even with the workforce searching and the public interest, they weren't able to find the camper anywhere. Now they had found what they believed to be the campground that the family had been using at this point. The camp was around 20 kilometers from the burned out car and outside of Wells Gray Provincial Park. It was an area called Old Bear Creek Prison Site, and it was where they found the .22 caliber shell casings and the beer bottle caps from Bob Johnson's favorite brand of beer.
Did you say prison site?
Yes, I did.
Prison. Like
Bear prison? Why were bears in prison?
It sounds like there used to be a prison in this area. At the time of this, there was a prison nearby. Mm-hmm. Now the prison is closed, but there was a prison nearby this campground at the time.
Go camping and
why would you
hopefully have no convicts escape.
I would assume it's because Wells Gray is one of the most popular parks. It was probably full, and that's why they didn't stay there, and they stayed somewhere else.
No, but why would you name a park
This
with the word
this
prison
wasn't a park.
in it?
This was just a campground. Probably one of those.
Tomato.
Well, it's probably like you know how there's a lot of like wilderness campgrounds in BC. They're not park campgrounds. They used to be free back in these days. Mm-hmm. You would just pull up to a spot, you'd set up, and you'd go, and that's probably what this was. Mm-hmm. So not only did they find the beer bottle caps of his favorite brand, they even found some full bottles of the same beer in the nearby creek waiting to be enjoyed still.
What was the beer?
I never read. I don't know. It was probably...
Molson
you got to think
Canadian.
it was Molson, Budweiser, Kokanee, something like that.
The good stuff.
In the 80s, it probably was the good stuff because there was no choice. There were even a few sharpened sticks that would likely have been used to roast food or even marshmallows or something over a fire pit.
Mm-hmm. S'mores.
Wait,
Yeah.
and those cans would have totally been the pull tab tops.
It definitely could. No, it was bottle caps. It was bottle caps.
So probably the stubbies then.
Yeah, probably subbies, yeah. Right around the same time, the police would get a tip that a camper that fit the exact description of the one that was owned by the Bentleys was seen driving in North Battleford, Saskatchewan, and being driven by 2 men that spoke French. Because of the French language and the fact that the camper was seen a few provinces east, they assumed the men were heading to Quebec. The RCMP would recreate the exact camper with the boat on top and take it on a press tour across Canada. They hoped that people would see the mock-up and it would bring in more tips.
What?
Yeah.
That's the weirdest idea.
So basically, before the camper would roll in through each town, the police would hold a press conference. And that was meant to publicize the arrival.
Uh-huh.
With this tour, 1,300 individual tips came in about the camper.
Did they just see the fake camper, though?
Well, before the camper got there, they would actually do a press conference. So they knew that this camper was coming. It was, have you seen this camper before?
What?
The idea was they would do a press conference. This camper is coming into town. If you recognize this camper from someone coming through town, call us.
So how did they proactively know where to go and where it was going? Why did they just stop it on its tracks?
Because
Yeah.
they never found that one. That was the
Roadblock.
thing. So they had heard that it was there, but it was calls in, and it was like, shit, okay, we got to find this. And they couldn't find it, so then they did this press tour trying to find it.
Okay.
So, unfortunately, this cross-Canada tour would end up finding no new information at all, but it did keep the case close to the minds of Canadians, at least. The camper would finally surface on October 18th, 1983, about 14 months after the Johnsons and Bentleys disappeared. The camper was located by two forest rangers on Trophy Mountain, again, only about 20 kilometers from the murder site, but around 30 from where the car was originally found. Now, this camper was found a long way up a very remote side road, and this made the police think that this mass murder must have been perpetrated by a local.
Because who else would know about the
Random
road?
trail.
Random roads
Yeah.
in the middle of nowhere, yeah. One tip that came in was that a man named David Shearing had beaten a charge of a hit and run the year before the murders in the area of the Wells Gray Park. So he already had kind of a bit of a record. The police knew the name because the 23-year-old had been in trouble with the law more than once. He'd been arrested for assault, drinking and driving, and drug possession. Basically, he was the town loser and troublemaker. Shearing had lived his entire life in the shadow of Wells Gray Provincial Park and knew all of the roads in and around the park. This was enough for the RCMP to search for him, and they were able to find him in Tumbler Ridge, that is located north of Kamloops. He was there due to the fact that he was to appear in court on possession of stolen property charges.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Just so many good life decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
The police brought him in for questioning, and they thought he was their killer, even though they had little to no hard evidence against the man. Now, while he was known to have an extensive criminal record and to be more or less a garbage human, he actually came from a well-respected family. His father had been a prison guard, and his brother was a sheriff. It's just too bad he did not take after one of these men in his family. Police doing the questioning may have had little or no evidence that David Shearing had killed the family, but they were very skilled at their trade, and little by little he broke down and admitted to the murders. He was going to tell them that he stalked their families at their campground. He shot the adults first before moving on to the children, that he claimed to have shot in the tent. He admitted to placing the family in the car and then killing them. He then claimed to have gone home for the night before coming back the next day. That day he would pick up the car and drive it out to the location he torched it. He came back after a few days to pick up the camper and drove it to Trophy Mountain, where he would again torch the vehicle. He did admit that he stole all the valuables from the camper before he torched it, though. The police did end up retrieving much of what was stolen, as he was storing it at his parents' ranch where he was living at the time.
What a winner.
Yeah, real piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, you didn't have to kill them. You could have just stolen all their shit.
Yeah.
They're out in the lake. Drive away in the camper.
Right?
Yeah.
Torch it.
Just wait, though.
Oh, God.
Yeah. David Shearing would be taken to all three locations, and there he would play out the version of what had happened. On April 16th, 1984, Shearing would plead guilty to all 6 counts of murder. Which is good, at least he admitted to it. Due to the guilty plea, there was no long court battle, and he was sentenced to 6 concurrent terms of life imprisonment with no possibility for parole for 25 years. Which, I hate concurrent. Like, do consecutive.
Yeah.
Never let him out. Like, fucking let him rot in jail.
I mean, he's never going to come out.
I hope not. I don't think he will, but he has the chance after 25 years, every couple years, everything's every 2 years to try to get back out, or every 5 years or whatever it
Yeah,
is.
but I mean, he'll be marked as a dangerous offender, highly to reoffend again, given his long criminal
But
record.
unfortunately, the family will have to come out there and actually go against him every couple years after. That's the rough part.
How old was he?
He was 20...
Ish.
Right.
What was he here? 23 years old.
Mm.
This is basically as bad a sentence as Canada gives out. After living the case for basically 2 years, Sergeant Eastham could not believe that Shearing had murdered all 6 people, with the only reason being he wanted to steal their stuff.
Mm-hmm.
This just did not make any sense at all to him. Before the trial began, Eastham struck a deal with Shearing that when the trial was over, he would tell him the full truth of what had happened that day. So just a warning, this is where the case gets really bad. When the meeting happened between the two, Eastham would say, "You know why I'm here, David. I think you sexually abused those girls before you killed them. You told me some time ago that you would consider telling me the rest of the story after you were sentenced. Well, I'm here to collect, David, and I'm not taking no for an answer."
I'm going to take my headphones off and you guys can go ahead.
David Shearing would go on to tell the sergeant that it was the two little girls that had attracted his attention to the camping spot, not the possessions. He would enter the campsite and shoot all 4 adults as they sat around the campfire. He then went over to the tent and poked his head into the tent and told both girls that there was a dangerous biker gang around, and he said that the parents were running for help and they should hide in the tent. He went back out and put all 4 dead adults into the back seat of the car and covered them with a blanket. After this, he would go back to the tent and crawl in with the girls. This is when the sexual attacks began on the girls. It was a 13-year-old Janet Johnson that had been the object of the violent sexual fantasies. With the adults dead, he kept the girls alive for 6 full days so that he could molest Janet.
Fuck.
He would keep them at both his family ranch and a small fishing cabin on the Clearwater River. He only left the cabin when a prison guard almost caught him with the girls. The prison guard was supervising some prisoners that were fishing along the river on a day pass from a local prison. The guard came to the cabin door, but Shearing was able to hide the girls behind the door, and they were scared enough of him to keep quiet, and sadly the guard did not suspect a thing. From here, he took the girls back to the ranch. One at a time, he took the girls out into the woods. He would ask them to turn around as he had to take a pee, and when they turned around, he shot them in the back of the head.
What a coward.
Yeah. He would then bring the girls' bodies back to the car, put them in the trunk, and drive it to the burn site. David Shearing is still serving out a sentence today and has been denied parole many times. So this is a quote. "If ever released, he could kill again," Eastham said. I could read a bunch of quotes from David Shearing, but they will just make you as mad as I was to read them. But I will say, after 3 decades of prison time, he has still not done a sex offender treatment program, and he still relishes violent sexual fantasies. I'm happy to pass on, though, that when Shearing waived his right to a parole hearing in 2016, he will now be scheduled for his next parole hearing not until July 2021. He should never leave his prison, though. As Francie Hake says in the podcast Best Case, Worst Case, I hope his sentence is a pine box sentence. One where he never leaves until he's in a pine box.
I hope
my
for a
story.
lot worse than that for him, actually.
Well, what that is that I just hope he dies in prison. He never leaves prison.
No, I get it.
Did anything change with his sentence after he admitted to also the sexual assault aspect?
Oh, he never admitted that in court. He only admitted that to the police officer. So the police officer actually wrote a book. I have to look up what it's called again after this. But it never came up publicly when he was first in prison. So none of the other prisoners knew he was a sex offender. They never knew that he attacked children.
He was a child predator.
Yeah. So he never got attacked in prison because of all this stuff. It only came out later because police officers can't spill these things privately when they're a police officer because it can hurt their career.
But at the same time, isn't there some kind of like obligation of the police officer having to like disclose like, hey, he also did this? Like, I mean, that would put him on like, you know, even more of a dangerous offender, sex offender, and I don't know. I
think because he was already a dangerous offender. He already had that 25-year sentence with no possibility of parole. And this police officer made it his personal crusade to ensure that he never left. Even after he retired as a police officer, it is his goal to never let him out of prison. So,
like he himself was a child at 23. Like,
yeah,
I don't even.
Well,
Do you know what I mean? Like some of the serial killers we cover though are not that young.
He was younger than a lot, but he was already
He's old enough.
Yeah, he was
For sure.
already a piece of garbage and a predator.
Sorry, my point was more so like he's that young. People are unfortunately granted parole.
Oh yeah. Oh,
But
I got you.
Luckily,
Sorry, yeah.
luckily
Right?
he was already a dangerous offender. So that was already against him. He already had everyone fighting against him. There was a bunch of parole hearings before he decided not to go for parole, and every time he had been fought, and he had lost. So I think he just finally decided...
As he should lose.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
I think he just decided at that time in 2016 to finally just say, fuck it, I'm not going to bother. There was a... I didn't actually mention it, but there was already a petition out there with tons of names to try to make sure he never got out of prison. So there was already so much backlash. The likelihood was already so low, he waived his rights. So the likelihood he's never getting out.
I mean, I'm completely on board for him not having his parole hearings because it's just a waste of everyone's time. But
and it's a horrible
I just
re-victimization, too, of what the family members that are left.
Yeah. It's just that I hate him, and he should be having the worst time ever.
Yes. Oh, I agree.
Yeah.
But that's my story.
Well, I hate it.
Yeah, thank
Just
you.
like always, Mike. God.
I agree.
Okay.
Hey, this is Mike of Brew Crime. Have you heard of the newish podcast app Podcoin yet? This is the first podcast app that will actually pay you to listen to your favorite podcasts. You can find this podcast app on Android and iPhone, and not only is it free, but it's simple and easy to use. Even if you've had a few too many brews, listen to this podcast. While listening to episodes, you gain Podcoins that can be used to buy gift cards or even be donated to charity. So either give to a good cause or get gift cards for places like Amazon or Starbucks. It only makes sense to make some cash tuning into podcasts, because time is money after all. If you use the invite code BrewCrime, you can even earn 300 bonus Podcoins just for signing up. So head over to your app store and give Podcoin a try. You won't regret it.
A loving father is ripped from his family, and two young girls witness something that no one ever should. The title I've given this one is No S'more Family Camping Trips. Yeah.
So funny.
Okay.
All right, so the beer that you've picked up is...
The Stanley Park Brewing Trail Hopper IPA, which you'll get the connection more once I get going on the story.
Stanley Park Brewing is brewed actually in Delta, BC, on Annacis Island, not in Stanley Park. That's going to change soon. Stanley Park Brewing is actually owned by EB and Bev, for anyone that cares, blah. But whatever, I don't. This says it's a full-bodied, aromatic, and juicy. This delicious IPA gets its bold flavors from generous additions of Citra and Simcoe hops. First, it's 6.8% alcohol, 65 IBU. So like I said, Stanley Park Brewing is in Delta on Annacis Island, but they're opening a brew pub, which by the time this episode airs, will be open in Stanley Park. So it'll be the first time a brewery has been open in Stanley Park since the 1800s or something stupid. It's not the same company, it's the same name, but it's still pretty cool to see a brewery back in the park for the first time in probably close to 100 years.
Cool.
So we'll crack this open. So this has quite an orange color. It's not cloudy really, but it's not super clear either. It's got kind of an off-white head. Definitely got kind of a citrusy, malty aroma.
Mm-hmm. It's very strong smelling.
Yeah. It still reminds me more of a citrusy English IPA. Like it's not something by the nose that blows me away like it's going to be super bitter. It's definitely got a lot of aroma, but not a lot of bitterness on the nose. It's got some maltiness and caramel, though, going on. It smells good. So the flavor is definitely a lot of citrusiness, a little bit of citrus rind. It's got lots of caramel and sort of grainy malts. It's definitely really, really balanced.
I actually like this one.
Yeah,
I'm not a fan of IPAs. I mean, I don't know that I'd go out and buy this one, but if it was an option, I would not hate myself.
It's definitely more of an English IPA because, the West Coast IPAs of the old days were super bitter. The New England IPAs are the super cloudy, super murky color beers, super orange, with all the juicy hops. Like, just basically fruit juice almost. This isn't either of those. This is more of that traditional English IPA where it's more of a malt backbone with some hops and with some citrus and stuff. So if you don't like the New England stuff, or if you don't like the West Coast IPA, which is that super bitter one that you're thinking of, you probably like this one still. It's not, if you're just a basic lager drinker, this probably would be too much flavor for you.
I don't know. I'm a basic lager drinker. I'm not going to lie, it's actually decent.
You've had some beers now, though, that weren't basic lagers that you enjoyed. Like, if all you drink is one lager, you may not like this. But it's not going to be so much flavor that it's going to scare you away either.
No. I got to say, this is the first episode where I've liked all three beers, guys.
We're in a roll.
TSN turning point right here.
Nice. All right, well, let's get into this story then.
Tristan Beaudet was a 35-year-old father of two, a scientist and a loving husband to Erica Wu, whom he'd known since they were teenagers. In June 2018, he took his young daughters camping in Malibu Creek State Park. It's located 48 kilometers, about 30 miles for our American listeners, west of downtown LA. They set up their tent, had the chairs by the bonfire, and were ready for a lovely camping trip. At some point in the early morning of June 22nd, Tristan was shot and killed while he lay asleep in the tent with his two daughters. His daughters, aged 2 and 4, were not injured. Not physically, anyway.
No.
Tristan's brother-in-law was asleep in a nearby tent with his 2 sons. They were also uninjured. Fear spread very quickly after the murder when police acknowledged that this was in fact not the first shooting in the area. Other victims soon came forward to report that they had been shot at as well.
Jeez.
But they assumed that it may have been a targeted attack, because why only him and not, the other guy and the kids? And
once you hear some of the other incidents that happened,
sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'll be patient.
4 months after the shooting, sheriff's deputies were searching for an armed burglar who had been breaking into businesses and homes but stealing nothing of real value. Usually what was missing was like food, clothes. It was clearly someone who was just trying to survive.
Yeah.
Which was part of why I chose the trail hopper, because the suspect that we'll get to was known as a survivalist and was just like sleeping out in the woods.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. While looking for this suspect of the armed burglaries, they saw Anthony Rodau, 42 years old, on a ridgetop. He was dressed in all black and carrying a rifle in his backpack. They didn't immediately have anything to link him to the murder, but he was arrested anyway for a parole violation. As it turned out, he had quite a lengthy criminal record spanning multiple states. He'd had convictions for illegal weapons possession in Los Angeles and Ventura counties, and he previously lived in Florida and Texas, where he had been convicted of assault.
What a nice guy.
Yeah. Subsequent ballistic testing on the rifle proved that it matched multiple unsolved shootings in the area. As it turns out, this was not Anthony's first random shooting. It had actually started back in November of 2016, so he'd already been at it for almost 2 years.
That's rough.
Wildlife biologist James Rogers was shot in the arm while asleep in his hammock. This took place in Tapia Park, which is only like 2 miles away from Malibu Creek State Park. Only days later, Anthony opened fire on someone sleeping in their car. Jesus. He's also been accused of shooting at 3 cars in 2017, as well as several 2018 burglaries in the Calabasas area. He's believed to have shot at a Tesla on Las Virgenes, V-I-R-G-E-N-E-S.
Virgins.
Virgins?
Virgins?
I don't know.
Virgins.
Virgins.
What would, what's his name now? Borat say it like?
Yeah.
Virgin.
Virgin.
Yeah.
Sorry, but.
Okay. He's believed to have shot at a Tesla on Las Virgenes Road near Malibu Creek State Park just 4 days before Tristan's death. He is officially charged with 1 count of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, and 5 counts of second-degree burglary. He was actually caught on camera during one of these burglaries, and you can see the rifle and in his backpack and everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Not the smartest criminal either.
Not so much. While he was in court at the beginning of January, Anthony was made to wear a mesh hood that prevented him from spitting or biting.
What?
Yeah, quite the charmer. And there'll be pictures of that available. I can show you guys the pictures, actually.
Sure.
It's quite the
Sight.
look.
So whenever we talk about seeing pictures on the podcast, just go to brewcrime.com, and pick the episode you're listening to, and you'll find those photos.
Yep, there he is.
Oh, nice bug net. Nice.
Does he have a sick mustache, or it's just how the sun looks?
I think it's a sick beard.
He has a mustache/beard.
He's got. It's not even a sick beard.
But there's a lot of shade from
It's like a mustache and a beard, but it's like not that cool.
I mean, it's not impressive
Not
or
that
anything.
impressive.
Yeah, I know.
Nothing like mine.
Your Santa beard.
Yeah, exactly. That face app makes me look like Grandpa Santa.
Mm-hmm. We should post that.
Mm-hmm.
Send it my way.
Will do. We should do all of us on those face app, though.
That's why I said we should take a fan picture.
We should.
We should.
What could
Okay.
go wrong?
Everything.
Okay. Anthony Rideau pled not guilty and faces life imprisonment if found guilty. He's either being held on $1.1 million bail, $10 million bail, or without bail. I read all three while researching this case. Bit confusing. The best part is that all three of those were in the same article. So that was weird.
No shit. He's being held on no bail, 1 point whatever million, and $10 million bail.
Yeah.
All in one charge.
Yep.
Good resources.
Yeah.
Erica Wu has filed a $90 million lawsuit against multiple public agencies, including Los Angeles County and the state of California. The lawsuit accuses them of failing to warn the public about the shootings before someone was killed, and that the deputies and state park officials negligently failed to provide a safe space. Like,
Absolutely.
duh.
Yeah, no shit.
According to the claims filed by Victor George, the attorney, on behalf of the family, quote, the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department, California State Park Police, Department of Parks and Recreation, and California State Parks and Recreation Commission have all confirmed they were aware of at least 7 unsolved shootings in the Malibu Creek State Park before this occurred.
Wow.
And there was no warnings. Nothing was posted about it.
Stupid.
Yeah. Many local residents were displeased and even outraged that the attacks had not been publicized. Alex Villanueva was especially vocal in his criticisms of how Sheriff Jim McDonnell handled the case. But to be fair, Alex was running against Jim to become the next sheriff, so
Of course.
maybe that was a factor.
Probably, yeah.
So currently there's no conclusion to the case because it's still being tried.
Yeah.
But with the amount of evidence against him, it's pretty secure in
The assumption.
presenting this as a case. So we can do an update later once the case comes to a conclusion. But for now, that's where we're at, waiting for the case to actually get going.
It's hopping to that direction right now.
Yeah, so that's my case. I don't understand how they could have had so many incidences and done basically nothing until these businesses were burglarized, and then from the information I found, there wasn't a lot done for these random shootings.
Yeah.
Once they had this photo of him burglarizing this business, and then the manhunt, for lack of a better term, was launched, there was it was on foot, by car, and helicopter, and when they did eventually find him, it was in the wilderness. But it's just a horrible thing that there wasn't that much effort put into it before this man lost his life.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's my case.
It's crazy.
It's horrible.
Yeah, it is. Most of our cases are horrible, though. Well, thanks for listening to this episode. You can find us at brewcrime.com, on Twitter and Instagram at brewcrime.
Yeah.
You can also find us on Facebook, on both our page and our Facebook group at brewcrime. Head over. Our page, we share our episodes on there, and then our group is sharing all kinds of true crime stories locally and from abroad. So join us on there and share your stories. You can buy our... Go ahead.
Send us any questions, concerns, comments you have. Feel free.
Yeah.
Requests. for
Story
episodes.
Yeah,
story
requests.
episodes.
That
Yeah,
would be great.
exactly.
Or beers you want us to review.
And then You can find our store. You can buy our T-shirts and hoodies and
Other knickknacks.
And
Towels,
phone cases
totes,
and towels,
anything
and all
you
that
can
shit
think of.
at brewcrime. Skateboards, yeah. At brewcrime.threadless.com. You can also help the show out. Help us upgrade our equipment. Help support our
stuff.
Beer addiction.
yeah, exactly. Help our hosting, and just kind of bring our show to the next level.
Currently, Mike is the only one with a new mic, and poor Beck and I are just waiting.
Yeah, exactly. I just got a brand new mic. You'll probably see in the photos from this episode.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd like to upgrade the other microphones too, but it costs a lot of money to do that. And Patreon is one of the ways to do that. So if you go to patreon.com/brewcrime, you can support us. There's multiple levels. Some of the levels you'll get stickers, a t-shirt, all kinds of stuff. If you want to have a Patreon level that has something you want to get, let us know. Maybe we can make another Patreon tier. You never know. So go to patreon.com/brewcrime. We'll start with our current Patreon supporters. We got 3 Beers In Podcast, Amber, the Faves of Our Lives, who are our first podcast supporters, and
My mama. Yay, mama.
Woo-hoo!
Thank you, mama.
Yay, our newest Patreon supporter.
So thanks to everyone supporting us, and you're helping us to make the show even better, and without you,
There would be no us.
yeah, there'd be no us. So thank you very much, and
Peace out.
keep listening, and let us know what you like, what you don't like, and anything we can do to make the show even better. Cheers.
Bye.
Brewcrime's intro was created by Mike using Creative Commons Attribution licensed audio from purple-planet.com, soundbible.com, and freesoundeffects.com. Logo design was by Ben Greenberg. All cases and stories were written by Beck, Nina, and Mike, and our sources are put into the show notes for each episode. We always want to give credit to the people that research the cases we talk about. Check out our store at brewcrime.threadless.com, where you can purchase swag like t-shirts, phone cases, beach towels, and all kinds of cool stuff. We can also be found on your favorite podcast apps, our host, Spreaker.com, or brewcrime.com, as well as at Brewcrime on Twitter, at Brewcrime on Facebook, at facebook.com/groups/brewcrime. Thanks for listening. This has been a production of Pacific Beer Chat. Here's a promo from one of the podcasts in the Big Heads Media Network.
In a world where digital content barrels towards us at relentless breakneck speeds, where posts and memes and tweets and snaps rain down a punishing assault of attention-grabbing data, 3 heroic podcasters with a strong background in broadcast media are taking on the internet. Each week, we break down the trends, technology, and connections that are transforming our lives. We are Things I Found Online.
Available wherever you get your podcasts.
I pressed record and I could hear.
Forehead's itchy. Okay, are we doing this?
Yeah, we can do this.
Should we get beers?
Oh yeah, beer. Yeah.
I'm stuck.
Beer, 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 beer. What's happening?
Just Nina's killing it right now.
When you hit yourself in the face, I was like, oh, that's a little funny. But then when you went, like, the headphones were birthing you or something.
I'm glad this has started.
Gotta get my head in there. Get my head in the game.
Oh, dear.
I'm crying already.
We are so mature.
Pill out. Pill out. Okay.
Wow,
Okay.
I poured that too hard.
That's what she said.
I gave myself way too much head.
Sorry, I thought you said you pulled that too hard.
No.
I don't know why I'm whispering, because Mike can just cut this out.
I sure can. I gotta get rid of some of this head.
What was that? Yeah! Giddy up!
That's what she said. How you gonna get rid of this head? Giddy up, bitch. Okay, I gotta stop.
Wow.
Ignored by the girls in his school.
Screw.
Among the significant several victims remained. I can't ever say that word.
Give this a full-bodied beer. Or
It's actually
not bad. Not bad.
I closed my eyes for like a second. my god, there was
Mike!
an explosion in the corner.
How did you do that?
That had depth and reverberation and quite the aroma.
Your face is so red.
Oh, Jesus
man.
Christ. I'm going to need another sip of this.
I don't think I need another sip.
Holy crap.
Belch of the season.
It
so
like
far.
vibrated my belly button, like how that went. Like I felt that to the core.
Wow.
Cool. Let's go camping.
Let's bring this down because this is not a happy story.
It's very, 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 very good words.
Yeah, exactly.
Very good English words.
Yeah. It's my first language.
Yeah.
And it's still a hard language to speak, right?
It's not my first language, and that was a rough one.
Wells Gray's. Don't make fun of me. It works.
Mm-hmm. It's like peak train time
Yeah,
here.
I know. Every time we record.
Yeah.
And the beer bottles are
You say that funny.
Okay. Oh, no, that's
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan.
How do you say it?
Saskatchewan. I'm the least Canadian person here, though, so let's not go with my
Sam
pronunciation.
Scratchewan.
Bless you.
Achoo. The RC.
Québécois.
Yes. Wells Gray's.
I hear like a buzzing in the background. Is it our phones? Is it because your tablet's closer to the thing?
Is the bathroom door open?
No.
Nope.
Is it just me?
I'll do a noise reduction. It'll be fine.
Okay.
It sounds like probably the bathroom fan or something.
Okay, maybe I'm just tripping.
No, I hear something too. Unfortunately,
Is it just the traffic sound?
Good. Until we have a room that is sealed.
What about a really big cardboard box?
Yeah, no.
Could get one for
So, like, homeless people?
Yeah. No, we need like a room with the actual soundproofing and blah 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 blah, which I'd love to have one day.
We should record downstairs in the library again. That was fun.
It was also noisy because people just keep fucking coming in.
I suppose.
Before the trial had begun, Easton struck a deal with Shearing that he. Before the trial, but I will say that after 3 decades of prison, as Francie Hayes says in the podcast Best Case Word Case, you sign a
Waiver.
No.
Consent form.
No, nothing to do with that. When everyone signs onto something to try to make sure you
Petition.
Yeah. Oh, balls.
Oh, fuck.
Lose a life. Lose a heart.
Hope you didn't want kids.
I don't want to do that, but I don't want kids. There's surgeries to do that instead.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
Hey, Podcoin probably just happened. Boop, boop, boop.
What do you mean?
The Podcoin commercial usually happens after the second story.
Yes.
Join us on Podcoin so that we can actually get some more fucking listens. Woo! And more ad money. Cut this out. All right. The next story is back. Ba, ba, ba. Ba, 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 boo. Yeah.
Okay. Anyway.
The anticipation is killing me. Mm-hmm. What is the title?
Tristan Boudet. What? No. I think it's Baudet.
Bludet.
Blah, blah.
Okay. Tristan's brother-in-law. No.
Blah.
Including the Los Angeles County and the state of California. Ugh.
California.
Okay, fuck you guys.
No.
As if you didn't make mistakes in your stories.
We definitely did. We all made fun of it too.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
До свидания. It's like Russian for, I don't know, have another drink or something.
Fuck. Tabernak.
But that was like...
Sorry.
Where should I go from?
If I had water in my mouth, I'd spit it out. But it was
I'm trying to pull up our Patreon list and it did that to me.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. Where was I?
Ooh, one last thing. Last shout out to our newest Patreon supporter,
Well-
my mom.
Well, let's start with the whole list. We'll get to your mom. Let's start with the list. We're going to finish with your mom.